All right, well, lesson 2.6, pretty much wrapping up our distributive property this week with multiplication. So far we've learned most of what we need to know. The final piece appears when we work with a negative outside of parentheses, but before we get to that, let's take a look at some review problems before we move on. We should remember that we have a 3 meeting 2x, and which is always a plus, that's going to be important. A 3 meeting a 7. We then remember that with 3 times 2x, you multiply the coefficient, which is 2 times the number 3, which is 6. Bring down your x, and 3 times 7 is 21. We then had one where it was a negative number, but again, 4 meets 4x, and 4 meets, and again, part of what we're working on is viewing that as a negative 8. From there, you get 16x, and anytime you multiply a negative by a positive, you get negative 32. Or negative number, so it's negative 32, because again 4 times 8 is 32, and that does not change. So let's look at an example of today's work and explain the process. So if they ask you to simplify a negative sign outside of 4x plus 6, in this problem there's a negative sign outside the parentheses. 2 key points. The negative will meet everything on the inside, that's number 1, and a standing negative sign just simply means opposite of. So this is how we work it out. If you see this, we will simply put that the negative meets 4x, and, because remember that's a meeting, the negative meets 6. From there, that means opposite of 4x, which is negative 4x. From that, it means opposite of 6, which is just negative 6, and that is all it is. In all actuality, as you get better with it, it just pretty much means switch both of them. Now, you need to be careful, because if you don't pay attention to what's going on, you'll forget. People typically forget to switch the second one, but again, that negative just meets both of them and switches everything else that's going on. So looking at another one, once again, the negative is going to meet 4x, and the negative is going to meet negative 3y, and the negative is going to meet negative 8. So again, opposite of, a standing negative or a negative just by itself is just opposite of 4x, as we just saw earlier, is negative 4x. But the opposite of negative 3y is a positive 3y. And the opposite of a negative 8 is a positive 8. So again, pretty much the negative just takes everything. That'll become negative, this becomes positive, that becomes positive. And as you continue to work on that, that's pretty much where everything's going. So take a second, pause the video, try this question out, and make sure you've got it. Again, make sure you're showing those meetings just for the sake of getting ready for this week's quiz, which will be the last time that you have to actually show those meetings on distributive multiplication. That way we know you've got it down. I'm going to go ahead and work now. The negative meets 3x, and the negative meets negative 7. This goes together to make negative 3x. This goes together. Opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. That is it. Again, that means opposite of 3x, which is negative 3x, opposite of negative 7, which is positive 7. All right. Go ahead and try this one, and then we'll get ready to close this thing out. Going over the answer now. The negative meets x, and the negative meets 6y, and the negative meets negative 4. This, obviously, the opposite of x is negative x. The opposite of 6y is negative 6y. And the opposite of negative 4 is positive 4. Outside of that, our quiz this week is going to be over everything that we've covered so far over the last 2 weeks. Pretty much all of the distributive property that we've covered. The easiest way to prepare is to continue to work hard on the practice worksheet. All of your quiz questions are on it. If there's anything that you're having issues with, please make sure you find time to ask about it and take care of business there. Again, we are getting ready to get into the last chapter of, I think the last chapter of our quarter. So hopefully this is helping you get over if you messed up on chapter 1. And like I said, the next chapter will help you out even more. But outside of that, good luck, and we'll talk to you later.